Hello, we are live. Welcome to the Audiophile Roundtable. What really makes a record sound amazing? We're going to talk 45 RPM. Is it better than 33 RPM? Welcome to the big show, guys. My name is Steve Westman. Let's bring in our amazing panel. Start off, as usual. You know him as Mazzy. I know him as Norman. Norman, Mazzy, Maslow. How are you doing?
Hello, Steve.
How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. It's now been 2 weeks since I saw you last.
Namaste.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. Let's bring in some more. Would you like to see who we have today?
I would, and I think I might know.
Okay. Are you prepared? Oh, I don't know if you caught the memo that I sent you earlier on in the week. I've lifted the Little Feet ban on the channel now.
Okay.
Okay. Just so you know. You know him as George Borden. We know him as Sir George Borden here. George, welcome to the program.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you. You know what? I was thinking about this. You were just on Michael 45's stream, okay, this morning. Now you're on our stream right now. If you would have hit up Rachel's Ghost, you would have done the trifecta. You would have been the first one ever to do all three in one day. You're close.
I watched, but I did not participate.
No, I'm thinking next time if you can just somehow get yourself into that, you'd have all three. That would be huge. Like you go 6 in the morning all the way. What's this one end at? 3 o'clock Pacific or 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. That's big. That's a lot.
Right, and I'll try to work the jazz bums at night or something like that.
So if you can do that, man, oh my gosh, that'd be good. So if you haven't already, we've got. Wait, I already announced it, but we got Mazzy. There's his channel. Subscribe if you haven't. Great stuff there. And also, too, great video last week in your top, was it 10 albums of all time? That got a lot of, that went viral, Mazzy. That went viral. Viral.
Actually, that was about 2 months ago. But
but I'm just saying. I mean, it comes up on my stuff still. I was like, wow. But check that.
You know what they call that? I'm an influencer.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It went viral. It's crazy. I still see it.
Kim Kardashian and I are like this.
And this is George's channel right here. Please subscribe. Good stuff. Good streams. And then we have one. Do you want to know who else is coming today? Do you guys want to know? Do you care to know?
Yes.
We'll get him on. We'll get him on. I'll find him somewhere. All the way from New York City. His mayor used to be Rudolph Giuliani. Now it's, who's the mayor of Eric? Is it Eric Scott or something? Who's the mayor?
Eric Adams.
Eric Adams. I'm Canadian. I don't know anything about mayors, but I was close. I got the first name. Welcome, Arnaldo. Fidelity's Frequency. Hello. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Really good. Thank you.
New York is flooding, unfortunately, right now.
It's flooding?
New York City is flooding.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Floods, torrential rain. Yeah, just.
So if anyone hasn't checked out Arnaldo's channel, there it is there. You changed the profile picture. That looks different than I remember.
I just put a little logo there.
And I also want to highlight something. I really enjoyed this. I mean, I got a sneak peek last Saturday when you and I were chatting, but here's your latest video. I really like this one. If you guys can see it, I just put it up on the screen. Check it out. It's not a blind shootout, but it's a really, really, I think, honest review of Hotel California, if you want to watch that one. Really good.
Thanks.
It's a good video.
Thanks for the plug.
I really enjoyed it. I actually watched it twice. So there you go. All right, gentlemen.
I mean, it's not that, I mean, I don't watch anybody's twice. I'm sorry. So
I had the dog barking. I missed it. I had to go back. Jeez. This is a tough crowd today. I can't imagine. I meant the comments already, Mazzy. Come on, it's Friday. Okay. We actually have two long weekends in a row here in Canada. We've got a long weekend coming up on Monday. It's the Truth and Reconciliation Day, recognizing First Nations. And then on October the 9th, we've got our Canadian Thanksgiving on the 9th of October, not
John
November.
Lennon's birthday.
There you go. So we've got 2 holidays in a row. So I'm pretty stoked about the next couple of weeks. It's pretty good, George.
And Sean's birthday.
And this weekend, we have government shutdown day in the U.S.
Oh, my gosh. And if you've nothing better to do, go to the Hi-Fi website. Here I am, hificenter.ca. And it's .ca because we're Canadian, so they have CA as the website, not .com. So Hi-Fi Center. And Nazi, were you in this room? I showed you this room.
I saw all the rooms. That's the one I slept in, I think.
No, this isn't the one you slept in. That was the one right next, 2 doors down from me.
The big 800s or the 8 whatever they are.
Yeah, 8. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's get to it. I think this is a fun one today. I mean, we've got George on for, obviously because I want to talk more about what makes records amazing. And I also too wanted to talk today, George, about mastering versus cutting. There's a lot of confusion between the two, and I really want to talk about that with everyone today, because you hear about, he cut it. Did he master it? Did he master it? Did he cut it? Okay, it's mastered by Bernie Grundman, but it's cut by Arnaldo. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different, so we want to talk about that today. I also want to talk about, when you master from the master tapes, and you have to also have a digital source if it's going to an SACD source. Are you mastering it more than once? Are you using the same master, plug it in a digital source, etc.? We'll get to that. I sort of know the answers already, but I want to clear things up with that as well. But news today, guys. I want to start off with, I know, Acoustic Sounds, their box sets here. I thought this is quite interesting. I mean, these are some, I mean, the Starker box for $195, I love it. One that I want to get, the Hugh Muscala box, I do have that one. In the Royal Ballet, I have them all. These are well worth getting. They're not UHQR, but man, these incredible.
I bet you don't have the Royal box that I have.
No, I don't. You probably have.
It's the one-sided 45 RPM classic.
So you're really healthy then. You're going to get off your chair every 10 minutes. It's like, wow.
And just carrying it off the shelf and bringing it over to the table to open it is it's like, it's like working out.
I'd like to hear about that, because that one-sided thing, I had in my possession Coffee Dave's one-sided Led Zeppelin anvil case for 6 months here.
Yeah.
And overkill, didn't love it. Didn't love
totally
it.
Overkill.
What a waste.
Total. Absolutely.
Well, that was the one that Zeppelin didn't give them authorization for, right? There was no licensing.
I had it here because Dave wanted me to sell it, and we ended up selling it for over $9,000. He paid like $1,500, $1,800, something like that for it.
So I wanted to say one thing I wanted to talk about. I know as Canadians, we always get gypped on like shipping and exchange and duty and taxes. And we know the Atlantic 75 series is coming out on October 6th. We got Mazzy's favorite artist, Phil Collins, the Face Value 45 RPM is going to be coming out. John Prine, self-titled, and I think it's Charles Mingus's Blues and Roots on the 6th. So those all come out. So if you're Canadian, one of a good friend of mine here, the show, and I'll go to his website right away, but you can basically pre-order it from a Canadian standpoint for $90 per, which is a really good deal, Canadian. So it's not bad.
It's out of stock.
Well, that's because it just appeared. This is his website, thesoundchoice.ca. So you can go to his website, email him whatever titles you want. $90 Canadian per title, which is really good buy. You don't have to worry about the duty and all that crap. So have a look at his website, thesoundchoice.ca.
That's a deal. That's about the price of one parking ticket in Canada for me.
I know. So yeah, he's doing pre-orders right now, and you can't pre-order through the website. You have to email him, but all the instructions are there. So he wanted me to give you guys a heads up there as well. And then I got a good laugh about this. I took my daughter through IKEA the other day, and I saw the IKEA record player. Have a look at this. $199 Canadian. It looks like a piece of junk. Look at that thing.
I'd love to hear it though.
I know. I don't even know what cartridge. I couldn't really tell.
Is that sandpaper? Is that a sandpaper mat?
But it's $199 Canadian. So that's like $2 US. I don't know how it is. I have never owned one, so obviously I don't know. Anyone know anything about it? And then here in Vancouver, Mazzy, it's really cool. When you have kids and there's playgrounds and lots of other kids around, you just want to relax and have some fun with your kids. But the playgrounds, it's restricted, right? So here in Vancouver, they've lifted a couple of cool things. So now you can drink while watching your kids at playgrounds. So look at that, liquor allowed zone. We got liquored allowed zone. I'm just trying to promote Vancouver and sort of the family oriented part of Vancouver. You can now drink alcohol while watching your kids.
That's a good idea. Does anyone think that's a good idea?
I was at the park with my daughter the same night we went to IKEA. I'm like, she wanted to go to this playground. I'm like, I'm looking at this sign on, this is hilarious. You can drink while watching your kids.
Cocktails and meatballs.
Cocktails, yeah, it's kind of funny. So, so another thing, White Stripes has now, I guess, been shipped. There's people that own or have it in their mailbox.
I got my shipping notification. Should be.
You got that. So you got that. So I guess we'll see a lot of the reviews on YouTube over the weekend or on Facebook. So I'm excited about that. Anyone getting some of the Atlantic 75? Do you guys getting the first 3 titles that are coming out next week? No.
I pre-ordered one, as I said in my video, the Boz Skaggs. That's it, the first one.
I got Boz Skaggs, and I got the Yes album as well. And gosh, there was one more now. I can't remember. Oh, the INXS. I got the INXS. I had to buy it. That's just because I'm in.
I haven't pre-ordered anything, but I'm tempted with the Genesis.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Other than Supper's Ready, which is like a weird two-sided song, I think, on that one album. But whatever, we'll
Well,
see how they play that out.
selling England by the pound, is that going to have an awkward split? I'm not familiar with that album.
It doesn't have to. I don't think so.
Okay.
That may be my favorite. That and Lamb Lies Down, but I'm not ordering.
Yeah, I only have the Lamb Lies Down, and then I think they did the series of the DVD audio that came out in the early or mid 2000s. I have that box. Yeah, so I have the album. I just don't have it on vinyl.
So you're not a big Phil Collins fan then, Arnaldo?
Oh, I have Face Value already. I think
Face Value's
my
great.
$7 used copy is good enough.
My Canadian original was, I think, well, I mean, it's probably $8 in the bin. Sounds great to me. I mean, In the Air Tonight was just an incredible song. I mean, it was recorded. That was another one. And George, that album itself was produced and engineered and recorded quite very well. So, there's probably not a lot of bad vinyl copies around. I mean, truthfully.
The thing that puzzles me is, I'm sorry. Go ahead, George.
Well, no, I'm interested though to see if they could bring anything else out of it. It's the same reason I would want to get an XTC record from that time period, as high resolution as possible. It's the same reason I'm thinking about Foreigner 4. That's Mutt Lange, and I personally, as an engineer and a record producer, I do want to hear some of those, I think, benchmark records as good as they can be. So, which is the topic of today. But I get it. It's the music. It's like if the music of Phil Collins doesn't speak to you, and it got silly. He got so famous and so crazy popular that it almost became like a running joke. Like every time you turn on the TV, there's Phil Collins.
Yeah.
But he got there for a reason, and he did make some good recordings. So that's what I'd be thinking,
Why isn't Phil Collins in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Mazzy?
Who cares, right?
But Peter Gabriel is both as a solo and for Genesis, right?
Yeah. I'm not the perfect person to ask for that kind of questions.
Does it really matter? Does it really matter to the Hall of Fame? Who cares?
It's a conversation you bring up. How come Raikkoud, or how come these people? How come the Monkeys or whoever? I don't really care.
Look how long it took Rush to get in there. Rush took forever.
It took all this time to get Jan Wenner out of it.
Yeah, true. Well, look at when Steve Miller got his acceptance and he did that speech. That was pretty interesting.
Good for him, man.
Yeah,
they passed over Paul McCartney quite a few times for induction as a solo artist.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Ringo too.
Yeah, it was a running joke. As a matter of fact, when the daughter at the induction ceremony, she was wearing a very appropriate shirt.
Was that Stella? Stella?
Yeah. Effing time.
Yeah. Oh my God. I didn't know that, actually. That's interesting. So do you want to talk? We want to talk the latest. I think that's the thing about our, what we're talking about today. What makes records sound amazing? There's a lot of variables. And then maybe, I want to start with Mazzy. Mazzy, you've been listening to records for years. I'll throw that out here. Number one, before anything else, as an end user, I feel a listening room is important. I really do. That's a big difference right there. And I know you and I talked about that when you were here on the show a couple weeks ago. Go for it.
I'm the old man on the sea around here. I listen to a lot of music. I listen to hours every single day. When I had an office in San Francisco, we would fill the CD changer up and have it go 10 hours a day. And so there's always music going. But as much as I'd like to have decent gear, and I have decent gear, maybe above what most people have, but not high end, but to some people, it might think my stuff's expensive, and some of it is. I don't want to be relegated to this perfect room that I have to sit in. And George and I have these conversations. Yes, sometimes you sit in a sweet spot, and I have a sweet spot, but I have a live room here. I'm in the area now with sofa. This is like a living room with a kitchen and reflective stuff. It's not treated, but I like to listen to music where I live. And sometimes I'm walking around playing music. Sometimes I'll sit down. My downstairs second rig is a quieter room. It's a deader room, but I don't want to have to go downstairs, even though it's a wonderful place, just to listen to music. So, people say, get rid of that TV. You need to get rid of that, put.
They're on to you about this TV thing. I hear about this TV thing
And
all
I
the
see it
time.
all the time. And I get that. I totally
Yeah.
understand it. And yes,
Are-
it would sound
Are you
that much
are you gonna cave to the peer pressure?
No. I mean,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I caved, I guess some would say, because I clean records now, which I didn't for years. So, I'm open to that. But I just like to listen to music and enjoy it wherever I am, not necessarily, I have my triangle, I have my area there, and I love it. So that's it just works for me, and I don't disparage anyone else for having all that great stuff. And when I'm in like one of those listening rooms like where you are, Steve,
Yeah,
it's amazing. I get it, but the "It's the Music Stupid" line is not there not for a reason, and it comes to that first, and that's when we get in this 45 versus 3.
Well, we'll get into that. Yeah,
be later. There's a reason for that.
And that's the thing too. I mean, when I do some serious listen here, comparing different cuts of albums, these are the rooms I listen to them, because it's definitely a different experience than me going home and listening to it. And I have obviously a decent system at home as well, as George and you guys know, but it's a different experience here. Plus there's no distraction. So there's a lot of different variables that really come into play for me when I'm listening to music on a more serious note, if I'm trying to bring a review to our viewers or whatnot. So for me, definitely it's the listening. Of course, the gear, that's a no-brainer. I mean, I don't think we need to talk too much about the gear, but I think really a nice listening room is really important as well. And then of course, variables in terms of yourself. I mean, it's the mood, what mood you're in, how your day's gone will really determine how you feel about that record, or especially if you're comparing other cuts or the same cuts, right?
And upgrades or changes matter. Like 3 years ago, right, a month before the pandemic, I got my first MC card. I got a Hanna ML. And oh my God, it was a world of difference, just that in my same room. And then a year and a half ago, I got this Hagel amp, that more power to my, power hungry Bowers and Wilkins. And that was the biggest difference I've had. It made like I got new speakers and everything. I wanted to play every single record. It made such a difference. So you can, and yes, I know, hanging a blanket over my TV, whatever would change things too. But I love the music, so that's where I am.
Well, and the one thing too, I mean, if you've got an amp or whatever, I mean, having the phono stage as well is important, right? Just that extra boost as well. A lot of people don't have that, and that's a big thing that I feel is necessary in the chain of your home stereo equipment.
Sure.
Well, and maybe you should try hanging a blanket over there in a live room. It might not make that much of a difference. It might be, it might be so slight that you don't even care.
I'm waiting for the day I see a video from Mazzy where his TV is gone. That will be amazing. It'll be like caving to peer pressure. That's going to be great. Oh yeah. You probably don't even watch that TV, Mazzy. When do you have time to watch TV?
Every morning I watch my liberal news shows.
Oh, I see.
My libtard news. No.
So Arnaldo, your thoughts now. Of course, equipment plays a big part of it. I'm not downplaying that. We know that. But your thoughts on this conversation so far?
Well, I think Mazzy and George already said it pretty eloquently. Yeah, it depends on whether you want to have a room dedicated only to music, which I do have. But there's times that I listen to music also from my HomePod because I'm either cooking, cleaning, or not in that room to appreciate exactly, because it's an open room. It doesn't have yet a door. So I wouldn't be appreciating fully the sound coming out of there, even though I can play music from the adjacent music room and be able to hear it in other common areas of the house. But yeah, it's a combination of both. And especially, I was reading recently that your ear changes throughout the day. Apparently, and maybe George, you can confirm this, listening to music later at night, some music may seem more fatiguing to your ear because it's been stressed for the entire day rather than listening to it earlier in the day or in the morning. Is that correct or not?
Yeah. The second you go outside, the noise floor raises. You go into a grocery store, go into a Costco. It's loud in there. I mean, I used to be the kind of nerd that would carry an SPL meter in my car. And when I'm on the freeway, it's, it was like 80 dB just in the car. So you're definitely getting that. But I think also caffeine, nicotine, right, all the things that we ingest also change things. I mean, during the course of the day, your blood pressure goes up and down, and blood's flowing everywhere, and hopefully.
That's why there's
but-
so many dead. That's why there's so many deadheads that think the Grateful Dead sounds so amazing, because it's what they ingest.
Or in tune.
Yeah, there's so many things that go into it. I think that, you know, and I agree, and I'll wait till I get to my part before I say what I want to say.
Yeah,
I was gonna go off. You know.
Yeah, we got lots to discuss, but I mean, okay, so we obviously as end users, we have to have decent equipment, decent listening room. I mean, we get all of that. Now, George, you've been in the recording studio obviously your whole life. I feel that obviously number one, it has to be well recorded. You look at stuff like "Bad Out of Hell" by the Meatloaf album, which, you know, is a poorly recorded album, or Jethro Tull's album, poorly recorded as well, right? Because it was done in some church basement where Zeppelin was up on the second floor in the better studio. I mean, stuff like that, right, is a big issue in terms of overall sound. Would you agree with that?
Well, absolutely, but I wouldn't say poorly recorded, because it exists and we get to hear those performances. So therefore it was expertly recorded.
Okay.
The fact that we still listen to those records 50, 60 years later is a testament to the fact that they were well recorded, because, you know, that's another thing beyond recording is also the performance. I mean, I guarantee you that Kurt Cobain didn't walk in with brand new gear that was really awesome and sparkly when he set up, you know, in that first Sub Pop recording session. That's another thing too, is that a lot of the times an artist has gear that is meant for blasting, you know, wattage down a beer hall, and then they find themselves in a recording studio and you're recording basically, you know, I've had to scrape flakes of vomit off of an amplifier because they were coming off, you know, like it was a like, you know, you don't and that's kind of a gross thing to say,
Was
but
it a
what I mean is,
replacement amp?
you know, well, close. But
is there a
the
story
thing,
behind that? Wow.
God, yeah.
but the point that I was going to make is that there's the gear, the performance, the source of the sound, how well the band is prepared, how well the songs are arranged, all of that stuff. And, you know, hopefully if there's a producer there to help facilitate, you know, how to maybe get it together, then the recording comes into place. Like when I walk into a recording studio, I'm not even thinking about microphones. I want to have them set up. Is everybody comfortable? That's another thing. It's people don't realize when you're in the studio and you got these headphones on and you're now separated from your bandmates by either distance or rooms or little areas, ISO booths and stuff like that, or your amps in another room, it becomes very you feel very isolated. And the band playing is not the same as them rehearsing. That's how they develop the songs in a rehearsal room, really loud. Then you get into the studio and everything's all controlled. And keep this away from here. You don't want to get any chocolate in your peanut butter, so to speak. So you keep everybody far away, or you keep the amps in the other rooms. All of that stuff plays into it. And then eventually, yes, the mic techniques, the way that the signals are treated, how they're stored, preserved, how they're recorded, the mixing, the mastering, all that stuff. Yeah. I and if we just get to the part where we now have the artifact that we're going to listen to at home, it's a whole nother set of things. So, you know, there's a lot of moving parts. You know, so, you know.
So I think my wording, maybe I got to change my wording in terms of not maybe poorly recorded. You did mention, yeah, they're recorded well. We're still listening to Bad Out of Hell. We're still listening to Tull. It's not maybe not to our expectation compared to maybe other recordings. Would be a better way to look at it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you think about it, records are made by record companies, and the goal is to make money on the you know, the investment. And so Bad Out of Hell is one of the most successful records ever made.
Right. How many records have they sold of that? That's like 30, 40 million or something. Stupid.
Yeah, like way up there. It's incredibly,
yeah.
You know, incredibly good selling record. And yeah, it's a little bit, it's dense. And that's another thing too. If you think about when that record came out, it was different. It was sort of tubes-ish. Yeah. And Mazzy knows what I mean by that. It had more of a theatrical content to it. It was very dense, and there was a lot of complication in there, and there was a long songs.
And that was the way they wanted to record it, more of that theatrics, right? Because I mean, that's where Meatloaf came from, that background before he became Meatloaf. So I mean, that makes sense to me.
You know, well, and Rundgren produced it. You know.
Yeah.
And also one thing, when that record came out, I think, what was that, 77 or 76?
76.
Right?
76.
Yeah, I think I was a kid. When I heard it, I would either hear it on the radio, in the car, or at my cousin's place on a not hi-fi system. Could it be that maybe it was cut with that intention for the times, and that's why now that we listen to it on stereo equipment that's much better, it doesn't sound so great because it's it brings out all the flaws.
The singles would be limited, or they would be different. I mean, a good example for me in terms of, as a kid, one of my favorite all-time sounding singles on a smaller record player was the 45 by the Lovin' Spoonful, Summer in the City. And it just had this dun, 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 that power thing.
I remember big snare drum hit with the reverb on it.
I remember years later getting, it's probably the CD I got, and I put it on and I was so excited, and it sounded like crap. It's just like, what the fuck happened to this song, But sometimes it is a sound of the times. And, you talked about Hugh Padgham's work with Phil Collins. That created this sound, the Hugh Padgham drum sound that they used with the Frida from ABBA and a lot of other things and all that. And I'm going to just mention this only because this came out in 1985, and there's a re-looking at the reevaluation, and this is self-promotion. I just finished an hour conversation with Jason Jones from Rhino about this. It'll be up next week after they announce Record Store Day announcements. And one of the features, and this is a hybrid mix of an LP and CDs that people like or dislike, whatever. But it has the Ed Stasium mix, who's the engineer who worked with Tommy Ramone, who produced the original album. And the original album of Tim is very reverb drenched, and I didn't mind it. But when I heard this remix, I'm not a big fan of the Beatles remixes that much. I was blown away by this because there's things in the mix that now when you go back and hear the reverb, the original one, you kind of hear them in the background. But the drums are actually really well recorded drums. Luckily, the reverb wasn't baked in to the mix. This, if you like the Ramones, now if you don't like his voice, if you don't like the sound of this like garage band in a way, alternative rock 10 years before grunge, you're not going to like it anymore now. But this blew me away when I heard it. So it's a shameless promotion, but I paid for this record and I love it.
So then let's talk. I mean, what else makes it amazing? I mean, let's get into we talk a lot about the mastering. How was it cut? And that type of thing. I think that's really important, especially a lot of the shootouts today that we watch or read on, read on Facebook or watch on YouTube. And we always sort of refer back to the mastering engineer, George. And so I think that's a big topic of conversation for a lot of audiophiles. Because I mean, does it have BG in the dead wax? Does it say Kevin Gray? Does it say whoever? You name it.
If BG's in the dead wax, that's telling you that Bernie Grumman cut the record. Now, so you mix the record by taking the multi-track and blending all the things together and committing it to stereo or mono or whatever it is, and that final mix is the mix that's the master mix. That's the master tape that everybody talks about when they say from the original master tapes. If they say the multi-track masters, that means they remixed it Steven Wilson style, right? He goes back to the multi-tracks. But at the end of the day, you commit to that stereo mix. Now, when you have that, it's on reel-to-reel tape, or it could be on a DAT tape. It could be on a CDR. It depends on what they were mixing down to. It became very popular to mix down to DAT tape in the 90s. And when you see those Neil Young records, those early, and they say 44, 1, 16-bit, it's probably if they recorded them digitally and then mixed them down probably to a little DAT. That was a really good way to convenient, efficient, cheap, 45 minutes of time to mix onto. But so whatever the master tape happens to be, you now have that finished mix, and then you put a bunch of them together and then you have an album. Now, that doesn't mean it's ready to be consumed by the listeners because they don't have, you're not going to give the master tape and let everybody pass it around and have a listen. So you got to make multiple copies of it. That's where mastering comes in. Now, if a mastering engineer takes those individual songs and creates a master for production, like a CD, they're going to digitize that master tape. If it's analog, reel to reel, and they're going to put it together. meaning song by song, a running order, tops and tails. It fades in the right place. It crossfades. The next song comes out, the spacing between the songs, and they might add a little EQ to song 3 because it sounds a little dull compared to song 2. And when it goes into song 4 is overwhelming. So they might pull that down. Those are the things that happen in mastering that have sort of still kind of the engineering idea of EQ and compression and all that kind of stuff. Now you have it all so it plays back perfectly. Now, when I start the record plays back from beginning to end. It's now sort of, that's the mastering that includes the EQ. And that's where you'd get that mastered by so-and-so, but it hasn't been cut yet. So it still has to go to a place if you don't have it. You know.
Let me stop you there. So that's really good. So mastered. So really good explanation there for people that didn't know or didn't really, understand the process. Because we get that a lot. Mastered. Okay, he cut it, but did he master it? You hear about that a lot. I know that happens a lot with Abbey Road Studios. John Ashley might have mastered, the Who's Next, but it was cut by Miles Scholl. So there's, two different people involved with it.
Right, and Miles Scholl mastered it too. He mastered it for vinyl. The actual act of taking whatever the master tape was that John Ashley gave him and cutting it on a lathe to, a lacquer. That's the real master as far as I'm concerned. That's mastering as well, but it was kind of sub-mastered by John Ashley because he did some things that can take place.
Well, and the cutting engineer would have de-essed it. I mean, probably the de-essing, a little bit of EQ sort of adjustments on it before it gets cut, I would assume.
Unless John Ashley did all that in the first place and then gave him 2 files, one for side 1 and one for side 2. If I master a record and it's going to get cut by somebody, I deliver them a 96K 24-bit file if it's digital and a 96K 24-bit file, side 1, side 2, one big giant file. And I say, don't do anything, just cut it. Right, because I've already done all that ahead of time.
So would that be called with?
But you give him different versions for vinyl and for CD, right? Because
you don't. I want to get to that
differently because you know the old thing people say, why get it on vinyl when it's a digital final? Just listen to the CD. It does sound different on the CD, and frequently can, if cut right, I guess, sound better on a vinyl.
And let me add to that. Because I had one question for you, George. And I mean, the whole thing, and we'll get back to the pretzel logic, rolling off the top end. It all started, Michael Fremer brought that out. But here was I did a video on it, and I still didn't get confirmation, but a lot of master engineers, when they master it to basically get cut to vinyl, use that same master, and they maybe hook up a digital source if it's going to be cut to another source as well. So my argument was that Pretzel Logic, the Geffen cut, was mastered by Grunman, the same master, not the master tape, so the same master that Grunman used when the UHQR was cut. Would that be a possibility?
Okay, what I can say is this: the 96K 24-bit side A and side B that I sent for cutting cannot be put onto a CD because it's the wrong sample rate and it's the wrong bit depth. So what I have to do is I have to disassemble the 9624, or at least take the 9624s, knock them down in sample rate, knock them down in bit depth. Now it sounds different. I have to take a look at what that sounds like now, make some adjustments, and then I'm going to make a CD master that has all the PQ subcodes in it. Okay. The 0 index, the 1 index, the table of contents, the read, all that, and make an all-encompassing, and hook the 2 sides together and make a final CD master that can then be replicated by a CD factory.
George, would you respond to Tublandia? Because, I mean, he says he's not buying it. Digital domain gains nothing going back to vinyl. I'm convinced that sometimes if it's well-mastered vinyl, it can sound better on vinyl, even though it's a digital recording.
Okay, so this Tublandia guy, I've never heard of him, never spoken to him, but I will say this. I'm just kidding. He was in the last stream I was just on earlier.
You guys know each other.
No, you're not going to get a benefit in the sound quality, but it will play back differently. And I think Tublandia will agree with this. When you take the digital file and you send it out into the analog realm and you vibrate that cutting head, and you've now transferred it from digital to analog, and the transfer from digital to analog does make a difference. And then when you play it back by rubbing that stylus through those grooves, you are going to get a completely different playback sound than you would with a CD just coming right out the speakers. It's going to sound different. It's not, but I think what he said here is the digital domain gains nothing going back into vinyl, meaning that it's not going to improve the sound quality of it. It's going to change the sound quality, and it might be subjectively more pleasing.
Can it be
to
more
you as a
pleasing
result.
because of the nature
It
of
can.
the yeah.
Oh yeah. But
so
see, that's the other thing. We argue about Steely Dan, right? The Steely Dan sounds dull to a lot of people. I find a benefit in the mid-range, and I can bring back the top end just by knocking up the treble a little
So
bit.
going back to the Steely Dan pretzel logic, I mean, we know that the UMG, the Geffen cut came out. It's a digital cut. My theory on that is that Grunman the same master was used for that Geffen record as well, but cut by a different mastering engineer. Would that be what had happened? Would have Grunman just put together? Would Grunman have recorded that using a digital source, sent that file off to the other cutting engineer, and then work it that way for the Geffen album?
Well, for the pretzel logic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming the pretzel logic was an analog tape because
Right.
Chad says it's all analog.
Right. But
Grunman mastered analog, right?
Yes, for UHQR, but the Geffen is a digital cut.
Also at 45. So yeah, it's very possible that whatever his work was. Now, here's the other thing. What you can do is you can take the work that you're doing on the way to the lathe, and you can send it off to another, like you said, another device that will record it digitally.
And we know that when Kevin Gray was on, that's what he does when he records from an analog. He'll actually hook up his digital recorder at the same time if he needs to send it off.
Yeah, and the digital recorder that we're talking about is probably sending it into a computer and preserving it into a digital audio workstation, because it still needs to have all of the flags put in to make a CD master. So if Kevin Gray is delivering a CD master to a replication facility, he has to then take that entire album, have it at 44.1 16-bit with the flags in there to indicate where the songs begin and end. But
with the Geffen, because it was just another vinyl, but it was a file that Grunman would have given, I think the fellow's name at AA Mastering, to cut to vinyl. I mean, I'm just assuming it's the same master that he used for Chad's for UHQR. You would think, would he have run the tapes again? I don't know. I think it was.
It wouldn't surprise me if. Because sometimes what happens when you make the 44.1, it sounds a little bit different because of the Nyquist filter and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it requires a little bit of extra help that you might do inside a DAW. He might just take a straight copy of the tape right into a computer, have the whole thing in there, and then completely do a different mastering session to make it sound as good as he thinks it can, and then send that over,
which I'm thinking might be the case. But I've never seen a review of the Geffen versus the UHQR to see if the same rolling off the top end is there. But I mean, again, interesting.
I think the point is there's a million ways to do it. Sorry, Nancy.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Are we talking 45 yet? Is this part of the same?
Here's the thing. We're gonna talk that now. So
I didn't know if that was the same.
My assumption, I know and then guys, there was a viewer here. He put it up, and I gotta find it here. I can't read this. It's too small, but can someone see that if they have a bigger screen? This is a comment that was put up this morning before our show started.
The KG copies of Rumors, Hoffman Forum, blah, blah, blah. There's a mastering at 33 and 45. The difference greater, 1 to 13 greater to my calculation, and higher dB on the 45. I invite others to check for themselves.
You can cut a 45 a lot hotter than you can a 33. So for sure.
It's the same, but it's the same master. You just basically cut it to 33 to 45. You're not going to change it again because it's a 45, right?
It very well could be. I mean, the fact is that if I'm sitting there and I have a lathe and I run it and I'm cutting a 45 RPM cut and I listen to it and it sounds great, and then I cut it at 33 and it doesn't sound as good as I think it could, and I could simply go back and notch up a little bit here or there, and then run it again to the lathe and get a 33 cut that is comparable, then I would do that. I would do anything that I felt necessary to make whatever it was I was going to send to a plant for mass replication sound as good as I possibly thought it could.
Well, this is a question I have, and because you're the expert, you're the friend or the interviewee with Miles Showell.
You're asking me? You're talking about me?
Talking to you because I have a question about this. First, and this
Miles is on next. Miles is on in the next couple of weeks.
Well, then ask him about this too, because this leads into the 45 thing with this breeder's reissue. I absolutely love this record. Interesting enough, they released this, and it's a 2-record set or 3-record set, and it's 45 RPM, which is a surprise that they did this on 45 RPM, and it sounds really good. And there's extra tracks. Yeah, it's
Magic.
really good.
You're picking the same records.
But
Did you guys talk before this show?
No, but we just both like strawberries.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it has one of those nebulous things that kind of, okay, it says here, 30th anniversary, original analog edition. Okay. 1993 album mastered from original analog half tape. And then it says cut half speed at
half
Abbey Road.
half inch.
Yeah. All right. Then it says cut at half speed at Abbey Road from 45 vinyl version, blah, blah, blah. I didn't think they were doing half speed from an analog lathe. Explain
and
that.
that's why I asked Steve that question. Since you talked to Miles,
I can tell you the answer. I can tell you the answer.
Digital, right? You told me.
It's digital.
Yes, it's digital.
That's where now. Thing is, it sounds really good, so I don't really care. It's 45.
Yeah. I've confirmed with Miles more than once because I know Arnaldo's asked me. I know Mazzy's asked me, hey, can you ask Miles this? Miles, well, it's the hype stickers and stuff. It's the same thing when he did Avalon, the Roxy Music Avalon. Complete bullshit.
Companies be specific. That's one thing. I'll give Chad all his kudos, because if it's digital, he'll let you know. And that's the thing that, and again, I don't care. I like the sound. It doesn't really matter to me. But it's kind of the disingenuous. Oh, the analog version.
I mean, the Roxy Music.
Are we going to crucify 4AD like people crucified MoFi because they?
Well, no, but they didn't. They didn't say. They didn't say like MoFi. I mean,
George, go.
It doesn't have to be digital to be half speed. If Shoal chooses to use digital masters for half speed because it's easier, and I think he verified that with you, right, Steve?
Yes,
it's much easier to take a digital master and go half speed with it. You can still knock the analog tape down to 15 inches per second if it's a 30-inch tape and still do a half speed master. So it doesn't have to be. I just wanted to verify that. Just because it says half speed, it doesn't have to be digital.
But before I asked Steve, I actually did a YouTube search, and there's a video from December of last year posted by the Breeders when they were cutting in the studio, and it's probably Miles' studio. You hear the sound going much slower, right? And I don't know, George, if you can. Steve confirmed it that it's from a digital file, but from the equipment that they were showing, from my perspective, I couldn't tell if they were actually running a tape or if they were running a digital file. So, George, I'd be curious to know. I'm pretty sure it is a digital file because Steve confirmed it. But if you search for the video on YouTube of the Breeders' Last Splash, you'll see the cutting room where it was being done as it was being done.
It's the same for this. This sounds awesome. This is for double 45 RPM, Light in the Attic. And I love the sound of this record. This is the last album they did. And of course it says the first time on vinyl, and it says from original tapes. But there's always original tapes eventually. It doesn't mean there's like 17 steps, in between there. But ultimately it's how it sounds to me.
So Chris, I mean, here's a question. I mean, this is interesting. So Mazzy, your Grateful Dead Who's Next box that you got?
Grateful Dead, Who's Next?
Or not Grateful Dead, the Who's Next. I'm thinking Deadhead, so I'm Deadhead. I've probably ingested the Who's Next. Okay, so Miles cut that not at half speed. That was at full speed from a digital source.
Okay.
Right, and I guarantee you that at the place that Miles Shoal works, little known studio in St. John's Wood, they have plenty of analog tape machines, and he is probably very capable of cutting a half speed from analog if he chose to. He didn't, and I guarantee you
Sean McGee did the Revolver.
Sean does most of the analog.
Some of them, right? Most of them. But what I'm saying is this: if the client demands that use these tapes and cut to half speed, I'm sure they could work something out. I'm sure that also Steve could verify without any doubt whether or not it was a digital file and whether or not that is
Here's an example. So, and George, we've been texting back and forth about the Rolling Stones box that Miles half speed cut, correct?
Yep.
So the source there is DSD.
That is absolutely correct.
But no one knows that. It doesn't say that there. We had to get the source from Miles.
Right.
Miles said it was DSD. He had a choice of what source he wanted. He wanted DSD on this one.
I'm really hopeful on this new Rolling Stones record because I didn't love the first single, but yesterday they dropped the long version, the 7-minute version of Sweet Sounds of Heaven. It's one with Lady Gaga. And it excited me. It's a gospel number. Lady Gaga, it's not a duet like a superstar duet. She comes in halfway through and it has a long coda. And it sounds like something the Gospel Stones would do in 69 to 72 with Mary Clayton coming in and doing that, rape, murder, but not quite. It's a slower gospel number. I think Stevie Wonder's on it. And it sounded great via YouTube. If that is a dynamic, and that's going to be one motherfucker of sounding records, going to be great. So that's exciting me. Finally, I wasn't excited about it until I heard that personally.
So getting back to what our topic is today, sort of what's making a record amazing. I mean, 45, 33, mastering, recording.
Could I just say one thing before we move on? Let's do this too. If the Breeders show up at the studio and they have some tapes, 1/2-inch analog tapes, it wouldn't bother me to watch Miles Showell take the tape and transfer it to DSD. And then from the DSD, he doesn't have to keep running that tape that is historically beneficial for us to keep intact as long as possible. And now he has it on DSD. He can take as many tries as he wants and try different things and get, take multiple cuts.
And especially too, if you're half speed mastering, you don't have to run the tape
like
MoFi,
basically what MoFi does.
Yeah. It would be completely within reason, and I would feel good about it even if I was the client and I'm into analog too, but I would prefer that than running my tape at half speed over and over and over and over again while you make little adjustments on each individual song. So
here,
just saying.
So Kirsten Edkins, she had the Shapes and Sounds album. I just got a text from her now. She just released her first video called Sweet Pickles on YouTube. So guys, just came. Sweet Pickles. It was one of the tracks. I think it's track number, I want to say number 2. I remember one off the album. She just texted me to let me know it's on YouTube.
Pickles,
yeah. So there you go. So 30. So if you had a preference, guys, between 33 or 45, what REM? There you go. What is better? Does it? I guess it depends on the album. It depends on a lot of variables, your mood, your record. I mean, is it always 45 better than 33? I don't think so.
So I brought this out because I recently have the reissue done by Kevin Gray at 33. Yep. And the original was actually a 45 RPM. So double 45 RPM. Now, obviously, the new one was remastered. So someone may have sprinkled something else on it. Was
the secret sauce.
This was cut by Stan Ricker. I think it says Stan Ricker Studios. That's where it was cut. And this was cut by Kevin Gray. And I have to say, I like the 45 original better. Now, whether it was because it was cut at 45, possibly.
Hold on. So Stan Ricker, would that be a half speed cut at 45? Is that Ricker's?
No, I don't think so. I think this is just a regular cut.
Okay.
But probably there were some mastering choices done here, which I was not a fan of. So I think when you say that typically, the 45 RPM will definitely have more bass. Actually, the Kevin Gray cut has more bass, but it's bloated and it's a bit muddy. So is the
45 can have more bass,
right? Exactly,
because you can flap that waveform around.
Right,
you have
now there could be different reasons. It could have been. I mean, this was an album that came out, maybe 15, 16 years ago? I forgot what year. So I don't think it's the aging. Also because probably it was recorded on digital. Actually, Steve, I think it was recorded in Vancouver. Part of it was recorded in Vancouver.
Yeah, there's a big recording studio just over here by my office.
Okay, yeah. It's possible that part of it was recorded there. Yeah. I don't know.
Bon Jovi's "Slippery When Wet" was recorded here as well.
Are you familiar with this cut, George?
No, but I would say this: everything that you're saying is absolutely correct because it's you listen to it and you like one or the other. People make records Gear doesn't make records. The speed doesn't make the record. The point about 45 is that you open up the space, you can increase the amplitude, which gives you a better signal to noise ratio, meaning you can get the music louder and up above the stylus grinding through a groove. Okay, so that's always going to be an issue with LPs. And then you have quieter vinyl nowadays anyway, so you can get a good cut, quiet 33 RPM, and you can jam more space on there. Remember this, when you cut records, no matter what speed it is, it's about the amplitude and the time. It's locked. You have X amount of time at a particular amplitude. Anybody who cuts a record wants to get the amplitude as high as possible to defeat that noise floor that they're dealing with, which is the grinding of the stylus through the groove. When you go to 45, you can also space those grooves out farther because you have less music on the side,
more space.
And you can make it louder, and you can have those big long waveforms swinging out there. Because remember, the waveform has to swing both directions in order to get the waveform completed. Right? It's a cycle, a plus and a minus. So you're just allowed more amplitude and therefore more treble, more bass, more everything.
More and more space, hence intergroove distortion won't be there for the 45.
If I have a choice, I would pick 33 every single day over 45.
Because you're lazy?
Having said that, no, I always would pick of 33 first. Having said that, if I do compare them, 45 usually wins out sound incrementally, some more than others. But myself and 98% of record buyers don't A/B music. They listen to it. They enjoy it.
This originally came out only on 45. It was a double 45.
Right. I have an original of that, so I didn't buy the new one.
Right. And everybody should understand, for this conversation, we are getting into these weeds in a technical sense. Your preference is your preference, and what you want is you want. Course, yeah. It's just a fact to say that 45 RPM has a better resolution. It doesn't mean that you're going to enjoy the experience more.
Right. And the thing is, I have about 75 Music Matters jazz, and up until the last couple of years, everything they cut was 45 RPM, mainly because that's the license Blue Note would give them. And so, except for when they went to SRX and a few at the end, they did 33s, and I have the 33s. And I've said this and a lot of the 45s, very few actually, they also did. I mean, all the 45s, very few, they actually cut 33. But if all of a sudden there was all the 33s Music Matter jazz available, I would trade all my 45s and take the 33s, even though these might sound a scotch better. And as Kevin even said on one of these things, the one with Baraka P. Dub recently with Joe Harley, when he moved to Coherent, his system was better. So some say the 33s, the later 33s he did for Music Matters, actually sound better of the equivalent 45s because he has a better kind of chain at the time. So.
And that's fine. And then you say that, I was just talking to Miles Scholl last week, and he feels the stuff he's done the last year. You do it worse than I do. You look at the names you dropped before the show.
Right.
No, so I mean, Miles basically has better equipment now. He's really upgraded his system. He even said, like the Rolling Stones, he wished he could do it over again. He feels he could even make it sound that much better. I mean, that's what happens, right?
Yeah. I do get the idea George mentioned if there's albums too long, a lot of times in the 70s, they'd put these long albums on 33 that should have been a second LP, but for most people don't want to pay for a 2 or 3-sided record or whatever.
And also somebody who's got a lesser turntable, meaning that their turntable is the best that they can do, but it's not, up in a higher quality level, they might have trouble with intergroove distortion. So a lot of songs that would end up on the inside, you now get to hear on the outside with that little plug-in resolution. So there's other benefits to it. It's just a matter of the physical playback is better than the 33. If you've been listening to an old record and it's on the inside groove, and now you get to hear it, nice, fresh on the outside groove, nice and wide and loud, you're going to hear that song, especially if your turntable has some challenges playing the inside grooves because of alignment or cartridge or whatever, you're going to have that relief there as well. Again, I'm only talking about playback. I personally, I play this. This is a whatchamacallit, an OJC 33.
Put it right up.
And this is the 45, right? And so this one sounds better, but I play this one more often because I don't have to keep coming back to the turntable because I'm running around the house. I'm not,
Now,
I'm doing
George,
things around the house.
is that the same mastering and cutting engineer for both?
No. This is the double 45 RPM box set from Chad, and this is the OJC.
But did the same people cut it?
Oh,
No.
okay.
I don't think
different
so.
mastering, right?
Yeah, I'd have to think so. And to be honest with you, it does to me when I want convenience, I play the 33. When I want to sit down and really like dig Bill Evans, like everybody does, I listen to this one just to get that, that as good as I can get it to sound.
And overall, I agree with
thing.
both of you. I prefer, in terms of musical experience, I prefer the 33, especially because up until like forever, they were always considered as side one and side two.
Right.
So that's how I've.
I like the continuity, the track continuity.
Yeah, a couple people mentioned the Hoffman Gray Fleetwood Mac Rumors. It sounds amazing in 45. Yep. I love it. But the original record is no slouch. But I have the promo that came out before the album came out of Go Your Own Way 45 single with Silver Springs, and that is one of the best sounding records, a 12-inch single of that. I think is one mono and stereo. I can't remember, but it's probably both stereo. But it sounds so good. 45. But if you're in the mood, same with Just Like Starting Over and Kiss 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 by Yoko from Double Fantasy. You blast that 45, and it sounds awesome. The drums on Kiss Kiss Kiss. I got that like a month before Double Fantasy came out, and it's a promo thing. That's why they were doing all those 12-inch singles. Remember in the 70s and 80s?
And also the people that grew up listening to CDs, they're upset that they got to get and turn the thing over in the first place because they're just used to listening all the way through with bonus tracks at the end. They had 80 minutes of listening, and now they got to most records nowadays that came out in the CD era are doubles. So you got to flip that thing, you got to get up and change the record too. So it's like if you listen to a record that came out in 1989 on CD and it was a full 75 minutes, it's a double LP anyway. So
the stupidest CD thing, I think, here's my rant now. If I wasn't going to do a rant today, but is when they when they did like secret tracks. So a CD would end, it'd be 25 minutes of nothing, and all of a sudden something explodes if you don't take it out of the machine. What a shit show that was. I can't believe I'm swearing on your channel so much.
Yeah, I thought, you've been, I don't know what's going on. It must be the weekend.
It's Friday. It's gutter.
So I guess we're going to be wrapping up, but I think, really what makes a record sound amazing, there's so many variables. I don't think you can really nail it down. I think it's going to basically end up being how you feel and your thoughts. Cause there's too much.
It's a system, and it's one of the reasons why when we find those records, like, there's a reason why we all talk about Dark Side of the Moon. There's a reason why we talk about these records that for years and years and years have set this sort of benchmark for kind of quality and sound. And when everything lines up perfectly and you got good engineers, good band, good arrangement, good mixing, good mastering, and you get that record, it's a special thing. It's hard to do. And so we should be happy that we have so many that are coming out, and that's why I'm excited to have all these, these high quality records coming out. How good can it get? That's fun.
And Mazzy, I know you talk a lot about the Giles Martin remixes of the Beatles. I like how you described it as the re-imaging of the Beatles. But again, I think that's more because it's a big market. They're trying to capture a new market, younger people. And I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. I have fun with them. And it's great to have an alternate. They're not taking away the originals. Hopefully, I wish they had a different cover variation. Remember when Led Zeppelin boxes came out? I know everyone hates them, but they had a second disc with like a negative of the cover or some extra. Make the remixes different some way so you can tell, like just by looking at the cover.
Yeah. And hi, John Bandy. John Bandy made a good point. A mastering engineer can ruin the record with a lack of knowledge. If they have or poor equipment or just a bad day, a bad mastering job can make a record sound super bad. And that's also a point. Again, it's a system, and all of it has to line up. And then we're lucky that a lot of it is.
So really, there's a lot of variables, but I think it just if you love the music, you're gonna love the music. If you love the band, you're gonna love the band. And I mean, really,
Oh, yeah, that's
it's
what it comes.
it's so minute in terms of sound. Like George was saying, he plays his 33, you know, and he plays his 45, but he plays his 33 more. I mean, it's just so it probably depends on your mood as well. You probably don't want to get off your ass either, right? You just want to sit there for at least, you know, 18 minutes instead of 7. It makes sense.
Can you send me a video, like a horizontal landscape video of just saying it's the music, stupid? Because I might want to use that.
We need to do that, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you need to do that because you're talking. It comes down to the music you enjoy, right? No matter what speed.
So all these shootouts and everything in the end, really, it's all about what you feel is the best. I mean, it's good to get everyone's opinion, but really, everyone. I think if you put 1,000 people in the room, you almost have 1,000 different views of what that sounds like, and no one has golden ears to be able to say this is the ultimate copy. This is, you know, no one's going to be able to agree with that. It's impossible. That's why last week we talked about the blind shootouts because, you know, Pepsi and Coke did the blind shootouts. Look what happened. I think what happened there. Who was it? That Coke did the blind shootouts, or was it Pepsi?
I think it was Pepsi beat Coke because Pepsi, I think it was Pepsi's campaign.
Well, tonight on the Jazz Bums, 5 p.m. Pacific, they didn't going to talk about that because one of the Jazz Bums picked over, of course, it was over YouTube, picked a Gray Market Chet Baker Sings over the Tone Poet. So
was that Mike maybe did that?
I don't want to mention any names, but you can.
So we've got to wrap it up.
YouTube, and you couldn't, you know.
George, you almost did it. You almost got the trifecta today. Maybe you can go. I guess it'd be 3 for 4. We got the Jazz Bums at 5. Is the Jazz Bums at 5 today? PST?
Yeah, 5 Pacific. Yeah.
Check the Jazz Bums out. Maybe George will almost. You could. I like to see 4 in a row. You got to do it one time. I think that would be a record. No one's done that yet.
I'll try.
I think I have once or twice.
And I'd like to thank. We have a moderator now. I don't want to forget about Wyoming Dave. Dave, thank you for being in the back there, because we're worried about Kami Maslow and the trolling that goes on. So.
And I'm so excited. I'm going to meet Arnaldo in person, hopefully in 2 weeks. If there's no TSA lockdown in America because of.
Are you guys? Will it be on a Friday? We can do a roundtable with you guys together.
We'll be out at some enjoying ourselves.
Okay, well, I won't be with this. All right, gentlemen.
Don't forget to bring your mask, Mazzy.
There you go.
I bring masks anyway. You know.
I'll have a wonderful weekend, guys. We'll talk again. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.